Okay, so I'd like to take a little bit of time today to do something a little different. It's often the case in my travels and in my interaction, sometimes with my own family. There are situations that occur in which people question these teachings and practices and question whether they're valid, question whether they're real, question whether they're legitimate, and maybe even say that this is cultish. So at the same time that that's the case, people are attracted to these teachings. And the attraction to these teachings, I think, has a couple of different aspects to it. One aspect is that people don't want to suffer. So people will do anything to escape from suffering. The only problem with this approach is that instead of running away from suffering, in this approach we run toward suffering. Right? Instead of trying to hide from what's hurting us, we look at what's hurting us. Right? So that the understanding involved in this approach is that the issue, the problem that's resulting in the suffering is our misunderstanding about who we are and about what's real and true. And so the approach is very different. You know, it's not an approach that is about trying to control anything. It's an approach that's about understanding and experiencing that which is beyond control. That's that which doesn't involve control, doesn't need control. And what I'm referring to is awareness itself. That this is the awareness solution, or if you want to be commercial, this is the mindful approach, right? So what I'd like to do, because of the fact that one of the things that happens in this process, they say the teachings in these teachings are very clear about the idea that this is not something that we want to sell to anybody. This is not something that is that we're trying to convince anybody about. It's not something that we're trying to be missionaries about. And so it's very clear in these teachings that it's very important not to try and promote these ideas and these practices and teachings, not to try and talk anybody into this, but rather only to provide these teachings and practices to people who ask for them. Because when you ask for these teachings and practices, and when you come to these teachings and practices in that way, you're basically saying that I am accepting the idea that I have to at least temporarily let go of the identification I have with who I think I am. I have to at least suspend that long enough to make myself available to listening to something that might reveal a possibility that could end my suffering. I have to be open and receptive. They say in a lot of these teachings that when people come to these teachings and practices, the degree to which they're ready to hear it makes all the difference. The degree to which they're receptive makes all the difference. The degree to which they're willing to accept, even if it doesn't occur to them this way more than not, that the idea that they have of who they are and the orientation that they have about life and about reality needs to be given a serious look, needs to be questioned, needs to be really reconsidered. Why? Because in these teachings and practices, what we're saying is that that's the source of the problem. The misorientation, the misunderstanding about who we are and about what's real and what's true takes us on a trip into a world in which suffering is inevitable. Suffering is inevitable because when you're trying to be something you're not, when you're trying to live in a world that's not the way the world actually is, obviously there's going to be conflict. You're going to be at odds. You're going to be in conflict with reality because you're not aligned with reality. And your ability to deal with reality is going to be severely limited, because you know yourself, you understand yourself to be a very small, limited, reactive person that is considered to be real and true by society and by the world. And so we come through these practices and teachings to develop more and more of an understanding that that's the problem, and that's simply not the case. But as you go through this process, as many of you well know, because many of you have been coming to this class for a while now, there'll be periods of doubt. There'll be periods in which you say, oh, this isn't working. I've been meditating for this amount of time, and I can't see any real difference as far as this stuff is concerned, or I don't understand this stuff, or this stuff doesn't, you get into these different places and spaces. Sometimes it's more intense, and sometimes things happen in your life where there's upset occurring, and it's often in those places that the identification with the body and the identification with the person's story and the identification with the idea that people have about who they are comes to the forefront, doesn't it? Yeah, it wants to run the show then, because that's the way it's used to operating. So it gets protective, it gets defensive, it gets aggressive. Have anybody noticed this? Yeah, you could get defensive and aggressive against your own self, can't you? Don't you? Yeah. Or you could get defensive and aggressive toward situations or toward other people, and toward teachings too, and toward practices too. And the reason for this is because the personality will muster up whatever it can in order to resist and stop the process of waking up. Understandable, right? It will do everything it can to survive. So one of the things that happens for people is the person that you've considered yourself to be has considered itself to be a survivor. Yes? Yeah, the person you consider yourself to be has considered itself to be a survival. It got you through what happened. It got you through the trauma in your childhood. It got you through being an adolescent. It got you through dealing with the relationship issues that we all face. It got you through living in this insane world. And now we're going to turn around and tell you that person that survived all that doesn't exist. Can you see how this might not go well? Can you see how how the mind and the brain might not be willing to process that data, right? That this person doesn't exist? But you see, in this process and in these teachings, if you stay with it, the outcome is good. If you stay with it, you come all the way around and back to the beginning again. In the beginning, it's necessary to say you're not the body and you're not the person. It's necessary to say that because your life has been that you are. It's totally out of balance. Totally out of balance. If you could say it's a black and white situation, it's totally black, right? So what this is all about is to understand that and is to appreciate that you're being asked to do something. You as a person are being asked to do the impossible, aren't you? Yeah, because I'm asking you not to exist. I'm asking you not to exist as a person. It's understandable that a person who's considered themselves to be a survivor and made it this far in life will not only resist that idea, right, but could get defensive or aggressive about it, right? Yeah, say, who the hell are you to tell me I'm not who I am, right? So that takes all kinds of forms, right? It takes all kinds of forms of resistance. It takes all kinds of forms in which the voice in your head talks to you about this, tells you, don't worry about it, you don't have to practice meditation today. You're too tired. And on and on and on. That voice in your head tells you about everything, doesn't it? Yeah, it tells you about whether it's a good or bad day, tells you about whether you're a good or bad person, tells you who to hate, tells you who to love, tells you what to do, tells you when to sleep, tells you what to eat, tells you what not to eat. What a burden. Really, being a person, huh?
Drives you crazy.
Yeah, it drives you. The only problem with the idea that it drives you crazy is, now watch, the only problem with the idea that it drives you crazy is that it's the crazy one saying that. It's the crazy one saying that. This is insidious. The personality will take on any shape or form in order to survive. It'll play the cop and the robber in order to survive, right? So the only way out of this is not to play, right? That's why Muji says, don't get into a street fight with your mind, you'll lose. You'll lose because your mind knows all of your moves. How can you beat it? Your mind knows all of your moves. How can you beat it? So that's not the way this works. The way this works is to sit and be still and be with what's happening, not part of it. Yeah, be with what's happening, not part of it. And if you do that, this is why, you could just sit still. Like Muji, he calls, and this is not a Muji commercial, by the way, but he calls meditation just silent sitting. That's what he calls it, silent sitting. In Zen, they say just sit. So if you want to really, if you want to get to the nitty-gritty of what meditation is about, you could do nothing other than to just sit silently and not move for a period of time each day. That'll get the job done. Yeah.
So what's the issue of that and sitting and daydreaming?
Well, when you're sitting and daydreaming, you don't know you're daydreaming. When you're sitting and meditating, you know you're daydreaming. That's the difference. Because when you're daydreaming and you don't know you're daydreaming, you're identified with the daydream as the daydreamer, right? Yeah, when you know you're daydreaming, then you realize that daydreaming is happening and you're not the daydreamer, you're the awareness of the daydreamer and the daydream. Right? But your question is a good question because this is a confusing process, is it not? If you don't get confused with this, you're not playing. You're not even in the game if you don't get confused with this. And if you don't get frustrated with this, you're not even in the game. Right? If you don't have doubt come up for you in the process of realizing the truth, you're not even in the game. In the Asian teachings, they say the great doubt. They say the great doubt is something that must be faced in this process. The great doubt. Have any of you experienced the doubt? Yeah. Yeah, because you've lived your whole life in one world as one person, and now you're being told the whole shebang isn't real and isn't true. And you walk around and interact with people in a world in which the world of persons and the world of materialism and the world of time and the world of the story about it all is the truth. You walk around in that. So this is a huge undertaking, huge undertaking. And the only way to succeed in it is to do nothing. The only way to succeed in it is to do nothing. The only way to succeed in it is to discover the possibility for being, not doing. To do nothing. Simply be here and be with it. It will come and it will go. And that which stays here and is here at all times will not be affected by that which is coming and going. This is the discovery of the truth. This is discovery of the self. This is the discovery of reality. Reality is that there is an awareness, and that awareness is you, and that awareness is free. It was never other than free. And its capacity is unlimited. It can be with everything and anything. And if you sit as that and experience what comes and goes, and know the difference between that and what you are, which doesn't come and go, this opens up a whole new realm of possibility for who you are and how to live your life. And in that realm of possibility, suffering does not exist. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a little time today to ask you, some of you who have been coming to the class for a while, to share a little bit about your own journey, your own trip. How has this been for you? And the reason I'm asking for that is because, on the YouTube channel, there are a lot of people that watch these videos and they don't have an opportunity to really express the process that they're experiencing. And so it can be very easy to think, it can be very easy to think that this process shouldn't be this difficult, that this process shouldn't include confusion, that this process shouldn't include frustration, that this process shouldn't include feeling lost, that this process shouldn't have involved periods of intense anxiety or periods of depression. The truth of the matter is it does involve all that. And so then when you're going through that, when you're going through these different spaces, going through these different experiences, which really are nothing more than energy being dispelled from the system, you know, when you're going through these things, it's important to have somebody around you that can say to you, it's okay, this is part of it. Don't freak out. You don't have to run away. This is part of the process. Allow yourself to be with the process. Allow yourself to experience the experience of being with these things and not let these things determine you. So I want to ask for one or two of you to share a little bit about what it's been like for you. This class has been going on now for at least 5 years, right? Something like that, like 5 years. And in that course, and in that time frame, 2 books, I wrote 2 books. They came directly out of this class, by the way, right? So those are available. The second one, Dying to Live, has actually, to my surprise, this book has actually been successful. It's been profitable. Not that wasn't why I wrote it, but I assume that it means that there's something of value there. And by the way, that book will be out in an audio book in about 2 weeks on Audible, yeah. And then there's the website that went up recently. You know, a guy came to me and asked me, could he create a website after reading the book? He said, can I do a pay forward and create a website for your work? And so he did that, and the website now exists. It's called Being Enlightened. Being-enlightened.com. So you could go there. There's going to be resources on the website. There's access to a lot of the video talks on the website as well. Okay, so who would like to share? I'm asking you to share about your journey here with this. You know, you came to this as a meditation class, and I'm sure a lot of you were shocked and surprised that it wasn't just a meditation class, because most meditation classes are just meditation classes. In my experience, and out of the process of teaching this class, it became clear to me that a real meditation class is not just a meditation class. There has to be a teaching that goes along with the meditation in order for you to know what you're doing, in order for you to be able to tolerate the experiences that you're going to have, and in order for you to understand what meditation is all about, what it provides. Why are we doing this? You should know. It's very important for you to know why you're doing this, and it's very important for you to know how this works when you do it. Yeah, you're practicing being yourself. If your attention is not in the thinking activity, your attention is as awareness, being aware of the body and the breath. That's an experience of the truth. So that's what you're practicing in meditation. You're experiencing what it's like to become familiar with the truth. Become familiar with what it's like to be you. Become familiar with what it's like to be present. Become familiar with what it's like to be the awareness that's aware of the breath, not the person who thinks they're breathing. That's the misunderstanding. The awareness that's aware of the breath versus the person who thinks they're breathing. You know, and I've said here, if you think you're breathing, please take a closer look. Because you didn't start breathing, did you? Yeah, and you won't stop either. It'll just happen. It just started and it'll just stop. And so the idea that you think you're breathing is part of the myth, part of the illusion that there's a you that's breathing, not to mention the you that's doing everything else. So who would like to share?
When I was in my 20s.
Here, I want to give you so you can get a better sound quality.
When I was in my 20s, I read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I guess I missed the point. I just didn't get it. In my 40s, I read it a second time, and it became more clear that it still wasn't there for me. I was in the search for peace. I believed that it was necessary to get in a loincloth and sit in a cave for 40 years and then be enlightened at the end. After I met you for the first time and you said, that voice in your head isn't you, that started the wheels turning, and I've been coming here ever since. And apparently I still have a way to go, but so it's been a very interesting and worthwhile experience.
Thank you, Jim. Who else? What's this been like for you? What challenges have you faced? What challenges are you facing? What's this? We're all on a journey, aren't we? They talk about the path, right? The path, they talk about the spiritual path. We're all on a path. The path is you were born, right? And then between then and dying is the path. You're walking the path, right? Some of us are near the end of the path, aren't we? Yeah, and when you get closer to the end of the path, you start to get more interested in this stuff. I wonder why, right? Wonder why. Who else? Yeah. It's interesting in a way because maybe it's a setup, right? Maybe the design of it is that, that as life goes on and the body ages, and just like Buddha said, sickness, old age, sickness, and death. As these things happen, it's kind of like the pressure starts to increase, right? The pressure starts to increase, to either get out of this or get with it. Get out of this or get with it. So who else?
I think that the struggles that I face are more with the day, combining sort of these thoughts with the day-to-day that I grew up thinking, which is that working hard and making money and, chasing things, chasing relationships, marriage, and all the things that I was taught to sort of pursue, how they don't sort of align maybe with some of this. And that's my struggle now that I'm in my 50s. So
that's gold, what you just said. That's gold. Because she's saying, I was taught I was a performer. I was taught I was an achiever. I was taught if you do these things in life, life will work. I was taught if you make money, life will work, right? And now all of that's being turned on its head. This teaching says all of that isn't the case at all. But I've had all these years invested in that. And for some of us, not only do we have a lot of time invested in that, but we've accomplished a lot of things being that way, haven't we? Right? The only problem is, if we're going to be brutally honest, right, that while some of us have accomplished things being that way and others have not accomplished anything in being that way and suffered, right, the reality of it is that it just doesn't fulfill somehow. It just doesn't cure the apprehension. It doesn't take away the uncertainty. It doesn't take away the fear. It doesn't take away the despair of facing mortality, does it? No, it doesn't solve the existential question. It doesn't make, the world that we live in has failed to make us happy, has it not?
I've been doing this for over 4 years, and I've definitely experienced some doubt and frustration, as you mentioned. Not only not progressing in the practice, but backsliding. I come into it as a kind of controlling, anxious personality. And but I have glimpses of hope. I feel like there's things that I am seeing change in, but it's more like the mindfulness aspect of it than the non-duality. Really difficult time separating from my body and tend to be analytical and trying to figure everything out, and you can't. And I just have a hard time with that.
See, I want to really take advantage of this opportunity to emphasize that what people are sharing is the way it goes. when you come into contact with this stuff. That's the way it goes. You've been oriented in such a way that that orientation is now being challenged. And one way to express the experience of that is to say, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to be. You know what I mean? Who I've been and what I've done has been the way I've lived my life. And now these teachings and practices are telling me that that's a misunderstanding. I want to be clear with you, and I want you to know that I understand how difficult it is to swallow that. You know what I mean? Especially when you're in a world and you're around other people that are saying you're crazy for thinking this way. And there are plenty of them. You know, if you want to find out what I'm talking about, go out there today and preach about this to people, and then come back and tell me how that went for you. You know, you'll get a lot of looks like, you know, what planet are you on? You know. Yeah, so that's the reality of these things, and it requires a commitment, it requires conviction, it requires a willingness to stay in the process. Yeah, and understand that the process involves these experiences, it involves these frustrations, it involves this fluctuation. You know, some people come to these teachings because they've had glimpses of the truth in which they saw the way it was. It didn't last, but they did. They saw the way it was, and they felt the freedom, and they felt the spontaneous happiness, and they felt like everything was okay. Sometimes these experiences happen for people, and then it attracts them to these teachings and practices because they have a sense that what they experience is always there, and somehow they lose contact with it, and so they're interested in these teachings and practices. Who else?
So I've been doing this coming here for about 4 years. And it started out, I lost my wife. And so I was advised to come in and meditate and find some calm and not have so much anxiety. And this class has been much more than that. It's kind of, you find your true self. And I have experienced awareness. I experience it every day. I'm a totally different person than I was 4 years ago. And sometimes it's hard to describe the change. I can actually see the person, the thoughts, where all that anxiety and stress comes from. And it's been a wonderful journey for me over the 4 years. It's been great, and it's made a tremendous difference in my personality and who I am. I know who I am.
So yeah, I want to close today with just to emphasize something that was shared there. You know, when he said, "I know who I am." Does that mean he's aware of who he is at all times, under all circumstances and situations? It's very important to understand that knowing who you are doesn't mean that you're aware of knowing who you are at all times, right? It simply means that that which is in the background that you didn't have an awareness of, you now do have an awareness of, even if it's in the background. Understand? This is why the understandings are so important in these teachings, because the understandings allow you to be clear that even when you're not experiencing the truth, it's true. The understandings allow you to be clear that even when you're not experiencing the truth, it's true. Right? So the freedom is that you can be in the middle of an upset situation. You can be in the middle of an upset situation with disturbing thoughts, with disturbing emotions, with disturbing physical sensations. And in the middle of that can be held in the context of the reality of who you are, so that it doesn't show up the same, it doesn't occur the same to you. And this business of knowing who you are is the kind of thing that as you practice meditation over time, it becomes possible to always go to that whenever you choose to go to that. You know, it's now available, right? It's available. And you know when you get lost in thought, and when you get lost in emotions, and when you get lost in automatic mechanical behavior, right? The time comes over time through the practice of meditation and through the learning that's involved in this, the time comes that in the middle of that, you find that you have access to the reality of who you are. And when that happens, what's happening is transformed. And the transformation is that what's happening continues to be what's happening. The difference is it's no longer happening to me, it's just happening. Do you understand? That's the whole deal. That's the whole deal. What's happening continues to happen. The difference is it's not happening to me anymore. I don't have to carry that luggage. I don't have to be stressed out. I don't have to experience the burden of believing that this physical body is me. I don't have to experience the burden of believing that the person that they said I was is me, so that I don't have to live with the guilt of that person. I don't have to live with the apprehension of that person. I don't have to live with the anger of that person. I don't have to live with the sadness of that person. I don't have to live with the life of that person. I can be free as the awareness, right? And when this process continues to its conclusion, it comes back to, the full circle comes back to where you started, in the sense that even the personality is awareness. Remember, the most fundamental concept in this teaching is all there is awareness. So even the personality is awareness. There's nothing but awareness. See, but you can't start there. You have to start where you are. And where you are is that there's this person, right? And this person and awareness are different. But I'm saying what I'm saying because I want to promise you that if you stay in the process, it'll all clear up. It'll all become a non-dual fact. All right? Okay, so I have been sharing with you that the Zen Center up in Ithaca that I have been involved with, the teacher up there gives a talk on Sunday mornings after their meditation practice at 10:30, and I sent the link to that. It's out to you as a Zoom meeting. Right? So on Sunday mornings, you can leave here and go listen to that talk, and I highly recommend it. He's a very skillful Zen master who's been teaching for 40 years, and I've been working with him. And if any of you are interested, whether it's you here in the class or the audience on YouTube, on October, I believe it's the 16th, there's a 7-day intensive meditation retreat there at Ithaca, at a beautiful place there, 60-acre center. I did the last one they did, and it's a real powerful opportunity to experience what it's like to take 7 days away from your life and intensively practice and intensively study what meditation is, and have the opportunity to work with a Zen master for 7 days. So if you're interested in that, you can let me know, or you could look at the Ithaca Zen Center website to get more information about that. Okay, guys, have a great day. Bye-bye.